Hey everybody, I'm Jack with Future Pastimes. I design Dune-themed games and expansions, and we're reading Dune. We're in a chapter now that takes place in the Southern Siege, where most of the women and children have been secreted away while the men go on raids, and there's a group of them that are currently with Paul Muad'Dib as he does his first worm rise. So this is kind of going on at the exact same time. And we are with Jessica, who is the Reverend Mother now for the tribe. And she's in her yali, her little room by herself currently, and she's listening to stuff that's going on, and she's trying not to think about really about Paul's test, because she knows that it's happening right around now. And she knows that even though Paul is definitely ready for it, that things happen. So she's definitely worried about it. But she also has other things on her mind. There's currently a birthing ceremony that's going on, and she knows that there's somebody's having a baby, and her daughter Alia is there at the birthing ceremony watching. And Alia is 2 years old, but she is a full Reverend Mother herself, as we get into more in this chapter, as we'll see. And so Jessica's thinking about that, and she knows that the birthing ceremony is going to be complete soon, because they wouldn't have bothered to start it if they knew they couldn't get it done, because there's another ceremony that's supposed to happen that day. And it's kind of a ritual where they're celebrating their Fremen migration. So this is something that happened thousands of years ago. The Fremen were basically refugees who were moving from planet to planet in the Imperium, from one planet where they were not welcome to another one where they were not welcome, until they eventually settled on Arrakis, a planet at the time where there wasn't anybody there who cared, and nobody really knew about the wealth of the spice. And so that's really what happened. And yeah, it's talking about they're mourning the slave raids on Puritrin, Belatagus, Rossack, and Harmonthep. Those are all the pilgrimage planets that the people who ended up becoming the Fremen went through. So that's going to be starting very soon. And Jessica's sitting there, and she's like, "Oh, I really wish I could have some spiced coffee." And not long after, somebody kind of reaches in through the curtains of her chambers and sets some coffee there for her. And she's thinking about how the Fremen, they're immersed in the spice, and the spice is what allows things like prescience, but they don't have the training to really understand or to have prescience. But it does seem to give them almost like a hive mind, like awareness and sensitivity to the needs of others and that sort of thing. So this certainly may explain how somebody seemed to know that Jessica really wished she had some spiced coffee. But then she is interrupted by Hara. And Hara, again, was the wife of Jamis, and she became Paul's responsibility and could have become Paul's wife or one of his wives if Paul had chosen it. But Paul has chosen Chani, and Hara has been like a servant, although she technically at this point doesn't really have to be, but she continues to be because her sons benefit by her association with Muad'Dib. And Hara has come in because, and Jessica immediately senses there's some kind of trouble. And intuitively, she realizes it's going to be directed at her daughter. And Alia does eventually join them. And it's all about how she has done something at the birthing ceremony that freaked out the other ladies. And it was because she said that the baby looked just like this baby that had been on a different world, born hundreds, if not thousands of years earlier. And how could she possibly know that? And she says things that only adults would say, and she acts like an adult. And everybody is like, what's going on? And she makes them uneasy. And Hara is like, there's going to be trouble, and we have to deal with this. And it actually ends up becoming a really kind of emotional chapter as, Alia explains to Jessica, we need Hara, and she is going to be a very powerful ally for us. And Hara explains, yeah, and it's because I love Alia like she's my own daughter as well. I care about, this family. I care about Muad'Dib and what is best for him because I know it's also what's best for the tribe. And they have a real connection, which Jessica really hadn't given a lot of credence to before, and she's realizing, she's like, yeah, this is important. And Hara would not have been a good wife for Muad'Dib, and maybe Chani would have, but she's still like, Chani seems to understand that Muad'Dib, like Paul, needs to be available for political marriage, because marriage is more than just about love, especially in the Dune universe. So they're all coming to these realizations, and part of it is they explain to Hara that because of what happened with Jessica changing the water of life, Alia has the same experience, and she is a Reverend Mother, and Hara hadn't fully grokked that up to that point. She's like, the tribe is, Alia is like, the tribe is lucky they have 2 Reverend Mothers. And Hara's like, oh, now it all clicks. And she's like, look, I will be able to explain to the other women that Alia is not a strange child. She has been, she's basically an adult pretending to be a child. And it's something that the Fremen will be able to wrap their heads around a little bit better. And so that will help to kind of smooth the way. And then right around then is when the ritual for the pilgrimage and the recognizing the deaths of so many Fremen, pre-Fremen who had been killed, and they 3 of them recite these words that are part of the ritual, and so it just kind of pops up in the middle of the chapter. But they're all just so in tune with the Fremen culture that they slip right into it, and they go through the motions of their obligations, and then they finish it up. And it ends with Hara saying, "Yeah, I'll start taking care of things," and she goes off. And but before she can leave, they're visited by another Fremen woman, and it's Darthar, who is one of Stilgar's wives, and she explains that they're at the point now where Muad'Dib is going to have to call out Stilgar. And that's an important part of the Fremen culture, is that the strongest Fremen should be the leader. And everybody's recognizing that, Paul has been teaching the Weirding Way. He's an incredible fighter. He's been leading these Razzia raids. And if he successfully rides to Worm, that's the last roadblock. At that point, he's going to need to call out Stilgar. And everybody in that chamber knows that Paul will kill Stilgar if that happens. And so Stilgar's wife is not crazy about that idea, and neither is Jessica, neither is Alia or even Hara. They all are like, we need to do something about this. And they all agree that, occasionally ways do change, and this is one of those opportunities where they need to do something about this, because it really is not going to serve the tribe's best interest to just have Stilgar dead suddenly. So that's kind of where it ends up, where they're going to do what they can to get a new path forward for them, provided Paul does complete his ride, which they're all pretty sure that's going to happen. And they've got bigger fish to fry. So like, Jessica has her eye on the ball. She knows that Paul needs to come into his own as Duke of House Atreides. They need to start to make progress on that path, even though Paul knows that that path also leads to this jihad where billions will be killed by the Fremen fanatics. And so he's maybe not as interested in like expediting this whole thing, but a lot of it's not going to necessarily be up to him. So that's where this chapter is. So what I really like about this chapter is that it in one chapter, it really humanizes Alia, and I think it makes the readers sympathetic to her plight, where at one point, she is crying, and she's like, I'm a freak, and it's Hara who chastises her and says, who is calling you a freak? And Alia's like, well, nobody. And she's like, well, then don't do it yourself. And Jessica is moved by it as well. She's like, yeah, Hara really does care for Alia, and it was really cruel what happened to her, and she didn't feel like she had a choice. Jessica felt like she had to. do that changing of the water, that whole ritual, becoming the Reverend Mother. Otherwise, she and Paul were going to be at risk. And so she had no idea what effect it was going to have on the baby in her womb, but now she does. And Ali even describes that process of what it was like coming, awakening to full sentience and self-awareness in this darkened void, and knowing that it was Jessica who helped get her through it. And then suddenly she was there with the Reverend Mother, Ramallo, who was giving both of them all of her memories. And so, yeah, she's like, look, it's hard. That's the reason why she said that baby looked like somebody else, is because she has that memory. She's like, well, it's true. He does look just like it. And she had reached out and touched the baby because he was still crying. In the Fremen culture, they're like, the baby has to do all of its crying on like first day, because after that, no more crying. Otherwise, a baby couldn't give up their position if they're trying to be stealthy and move in a group. And Alia says he'd cried enough, and because she's got this, the Reverend Mothers have got this whole interconnectedness, and it's part of the spice and it's part of their training, and it relates back to that whole thing that Jessica was feeling with the hive mind thing. So Alia was able to almost connect with the baby to calm it down, and she seems confident that he's done crying at this point. But it's a strange thing for a 2-year-old to do in front of a bunch of adult women, and that's really what spooked them. But I really enjoyed the insights into the ladies and Jessica realizing a number of things, and just her emotional connection to Alia, which she realizes she hasn't done as good a job of being a mother. It's just an unusual situation. And then just the relationship to Hara and how important she's been, not only to Jessica and to Alia and to Paul, but to the tribe as well. And so I just really enjoy this chapter for those reasons. And I like how it builds up that tension about Stilgar, because, everybody reading the book, everyone loves Stilgar. He's just a great character. He's no nonsense, and he's really strong. He's pretty wise, and he's an amazing fighter. So, you sympathize with them as well. You're like, there's got to be a way to avoid killing Stilgar. So that's what happens in this chapter. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you have any questions about it. The first time I read through it, I was like, wait a minute, what are they talking about? And it was the ritual where they were recognizing and acknowledging the deaths of the Fremen from generations past. And it seemed really incongruous. But then I reread the chapter. This was like the first or second time, decades ago, when I was first reading Dune. And I was like, oh, yeah, they were getting ready. They were steeling themselves for this ritual, and there it is. And so Frank Herbert is just like, he's off and running, and you have to run to keep up with him. So occasionally that happens, and Dune is such a dense universe filled with so many details that it's easy to get lost in the shuffle. So if you have questions, let me know. Let me know your comments, what you think of this chapter. The chapter wasn't really adapted in the Lynch movie at all. The Alia scenes were few and far between. Hara wasn't a character in it. Same thing with the miniseries. There was a nice scene in the miniseries where Alia does feel like she is a little bit, not necessarily a freak. I mean, Jessica is the one who cries, and Alia scoops up her tear and makes sure that it's not lost. That's moisture that you can't afford to lose. But I found it to be a moving scene in the miniseries. So it'll be interesting to see if they do this. We don't know if Hara is a character yet in the second movie for Villeneuve, and how they're going to handle Alia. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it, because I hope stuff like this is going to be in there. I think it's really rich and interesting, and it really humanizes the characters. So that's my 2 cents. Let me know yours. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.